I get it. When you're scrolling through the best home theater speakers list, you start to feel that knot in your stomach. The pictures look sleek, the specs promise higher audio certification and Dolby Atmos, and the price seems reasonable for a whole home setup. But then you remember that time you bought a pair of bookshelf speakers that looked amazing online and ended up sounding like they were trapped in a cardboard box when you finally got them home. That disappointment is why I'm breaking down the Polk Audio Reserve R500 tower speakers paired with the R300 center channel. I want you to walk away knowing exactly whether these are the right pieces for your room, and not just another set of specs that sound good on paper. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about who these speakers are really built for. If you already have a decent AVR, a decent subwoofer, and you're looking to upgrade your front left and right channels without breaking the bank, the R500 towers are a solid step up from entry-level towers. They're also a decent match if you're assembling a new Dolby Atmos system and need a center speaker that can handle dialogue clearly while still feeling integrated with the towers. On the flip side, if you're a true audiophile who lives for the nuance of a single-driver coaxial system or you have a very large listening space, you might find the R500's 5.25-inch woofers a bit underpowered. And if your budget is tighter than mid-range, you might be better off waiting for a sale on a higher-end brand or going with a pair of high-efficiency bookshelf speakers that need less power from the amp. The first thing I tested in my own setup was placement. The R500 tower is marketed as compact, and that's accurate. They're about 40 inches tall, which makes them fit nicely between a couch and a wall without overwhelming the space. I placed them on the floor, a few inches away from the side walls, and oriented them so the tweeters were at ear level when I was seated. The result was a surprisingly wide sweet spot. In a room that's 15 by 12 feet, I could move a couple of seats left or right and still hear the highs stay crisp, which is something you often lose with larger, bulkier towers. The R300 center is equally forgiving. It sits well on a console shelf or can sit directly on a piece of furniture. I tried it on a medium-sized bookshelf and the sound field blended seamlessly with the towers, making dialogue in movies feel anchored without any hollow quality that sometimes shows up with cheaper center speakers. Now, let's get into the audio performance that most people care about. The R500's dual 5.25-inch woofers deliver a solid bass punch for a speaker of this size. In my tests with action movies, the explosions and low-frequency rumble were present but not overwhelming. There's enough impact to feel the scene, yet the bass never overpowers the mid-range or forces you to turn down the volume to protect your ears. The single 1-inch tweeter does a respectable job handling the high frequencies, especially the sibilance in dialogue and the shimmer of orchestral strings. One thing to watch out for, because the tweeter is fairly small, it can sometimes sound a bit bright if you're listening at high volumes for long periods. I found that pulling the volume back a notch after a few minutes of intense action prevented any listener fatigue. For music lovers, the R500's performance is a mixed bag. In the mid-range, think vocals, guitars, piano. The speakers are clear and articulate. I played a live acoustic recording, and the detail was comparable to a decent pair of bookshelf speakers. However, the lack of a dedicated horn or larger dome tweeter means that some of the sparkle you get from higher-end towers is missing. If you're primarily listening to jazz or classic rock, you'll enjoy the balanced sound, but for genres that rely heavily on high-frequency detail like electronic or modern pop, you might feel the high end is a touch restrained. Dolby Atmos is where the bundle really tries to differentiate itself. The R500 towers can be angled upward to bounce sound off the ceiling, creating that overhead effect without needing additional height speakers. In my room, the effect was subtly immersive. Rain sounds seemed to fall from above, and aircraft passed over with a decent sense of altitude. It's not a full-blown dome system, but for a 2-channel front upgrade with Atmos capability, the towers hold their own. The R300 center doesn't have any Atmos drivers, but it does a solid job anchoring dialogue, which is crucial for a coherent soundstage when you're watching movies with a mixed dialogue and effects track. One practical strength that often gets glossed over is the wiring and connectivity. Both speakers use standard binding posts, so you can plug in standard gauge speaker wire without needing adapters. I appreciated that they don't require proprietary cables or a separate power supply for the tweeter. Everything is passive and straightforward. Additionally, the speakers come with a fairly generous